This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey, what's up? Trust me when I say this, vegetarian chili can be just as delicious and just as comforting as meat-based chili, but you really gotta know what you're doing. Today, I'm gonna show you a few top secret moves to make amazing vegetarian chili that's way more than just tomato black bean soup. This is Weeknighting. To get started, I'll need 250 grams of white onion, 100 grams of poblano pepper, and 15 grams of minced garlic. For the onion, I gave it a chunky rustic dice like this. One large onion should give us the 250 grams that we need. For the poblano, I cut it into strips and then small dice those into pieces relatively close to the onion. Sub in half the weight of jalapenos if you want more heat. For the garlic, I just used my pressed and smushed it into a paste. Once I've got the aromatic veggies sorted out here, I'm gonna grab my 6.5 quart Dutch oven and drop it on the stove over medium-high heat. I'll hit that with a little squizzer of olive oil, let's call it a 1/4 cup, and then in goes my onions and then my poblanos. Now, a big old pinch of salt in there to help release some moisture, and now I'll stir everything to combine and saute these two vegetables together for about 2 to 3 minutes or until they're softened, translucent, and starting to caramelize like this. Next in is my minced garlic, and I'll saute that with the onions and poblanos for just a minute or until it's smelling fragrant and it's softened. Now, let's build the flavor base of this chili. First in is 25 grams of tomato paste, then in goes 40 grams of diced chipotle chilies in adobo, also known as just smoked jalapenos sitting in a very delicious savory tomato sauce. 40 grams of chipotles is roughly 2 of these chilies. If you wanted to dial up the smoky heat here, by all means, you could add in more than 40 grams. I'm dicing mine very small so that they basically melt into the background of this chili. Next, in goes B-Man's super secret, great vibes, good times veggie chili blend. That's just 20 grams of chili powder, 15 grams of smoked paprika, or regular paprika if that's all you got, 15 grams of cumin, and 10 grams of cocoa. Cocoa is kind of the X factor here. It doesn't make the chili taste chocolatey per se, but it does bring a depth of flavor that you just can't get from any other ingredient, in my opinion. Next, I'm gonna jump into the pot and stir these spices, tomato paste, and chipotles together to get everything combined and to open up their flavor. But things can burn quickly here, especially with the spices, especially with the cocoa. So after only about 30 seconds of dry toasting, these spices should be fragrant and fully bloomed out. Next, I'll deglaze this pot with 500 grams of vegetable stock, or water would work as well. Then one 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes with its juices and one 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. These tomatoes in particular were a little bit coarse for this chili, so I decided to buzz them real quick with my immersion blender to make them just a little bit smoother. Now, I'll stir to get everything combined and make sure to scrape up the bottom really well, especially in these cast iron enamel pots. The spices tend to get stuck to the bottom and they will burn if we don't scrape them up. The liquid here should make that easy to do though. Next, I'll add in 200 grams of red lentils. If you haven't heard of red lentils before, they're a quick cooking lentil with, you know, regular lentil-y flavor. They're basically small beans, but when cooked, they give this chili a background texture that isn't exactly like ground meat, but it's somewhere in between a bean and a sauce. It just gives the final product a much more robust, interesting texture. As well as flavor, red lentils taste really good. I think they're mainly used for Indian and Pakistani style cooking, but I got these at my regular old Americanized grocery store right by the beans. If you can't get red lentils, I would say sub in an extra can of beans later on. Now, these lentils take about 15 to 20 minutes to cook fully, so once they're stirred in, I'll bring this pot back up to a simmer. That's super important, by the way. Thicker sauces cook things quite a bit slower, so we need to start at a full boil. And once we're there, I'll turn the heat down to medium-low, cover the pot with a lid, and simmer these lentils while I thank the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. Squarespace makes it really easy to make an online business for just about anything that you're into. Let's say that thing that you're into is pickles, for example, and you finally decided that it's time to turn it into a business. Squarespace can help. Just choose one of their flexible templates that fits your style and then customize it by changing photos, colors, text, or adding pages with their website builder. I'm also thinking that there's a pretty good opportunity here for a pickle-related blog. Squarespace has a whole suite of tools to help you organize, optimize, share, and upload anything related to a blog. Or maybe one day you have your own line of custom pickles that you sell to all of the other pickle heads on the internet. Or like pickle t-shirts would be sick as well. These are just some ideas. I'm just kind of workshopping a business plan for you. Go to squarespace.com and try their free trial. And when you're ready to share your pickle website or business with the world, go to squarespace.com/Lagerstrom to go live and you'll get 10% off that website or your domain. 10% off is a really good deal. You should try it. The link is in my description. Thank you, Squarespace. 5 minutes later, I'll come back to stir these lentils to make sure that they're cooking evenly and not sticking to the bottom of the pot. Lid back on now and I'll cook for 10 more minutes. When I come back after 15 15 to 20 minutes of cook time here, the lentils have softened up and swollen up, and the sauce is quite a bit thicker than before. That looks perfect. Now, I do recommend tasting a few lentils at this point to make sure that they are indeed cooked through and not crunchy. The chili is going to be cooking a little bit longer, so if they're a touch al dente, that's not a big deal. We've got time. We just want to make sure that they're not raw. Next, in goes 2 cans of drained and rinsed black beans. I chose black beans specifically because I think out of all the canned bean options, black beans have the best texture. Even when black beans are overcooked in the can, they're still creamy with a touch of bite on the outside. In my opinion, canned versions of pinto beans and white beans are usually mealy and blown out. The other bean that I'm using here for the exact same textural reason is kidney beans. I'm adding in 2 cans of kidneys with their bean juice included. That deep reddish purple bean liquor is super starchy and helps bring some much needed viscosity to a dish that has no meat in it. Meat-based chilies, especially Texas style, are full of melted meat gelatin, and that gives the background of the chili a body and sauciness that's hard to replicate in a vegetarian version. Bean liquor mimics this gelatin, but taste yours first. It shouldn't be salty or watery. If it is, skip it and add in 200 grams of vegetable stock instead. Behind the beans, I'll add in 225 grams of frozen corn, and then I'll stir everything to combine. This is looking a touch thick now, so I'm going to add in a few splashes of veggie stock to thin it back out. Pulses in general, especially lentils, soak up tons of liquid while they cook, so keep an eye on the moisture level overall. Now, I'll bring this pot back to a simmer and cook it with the lid on but cracked for about 10 more minutes to let everything get to know each other. 10 minutes later, or after 25 to 30 minutes of cook time in total, I'll pull this chili off the heat to take one last look. Texturally, it looks perfect. The base of the red lentils here are doing a great job filling that gap between tomato sauce and beans, and it really holds itself together like a meat chili would. But this chili needs its final seasoning before we serve it, so I'm gonna add in 10 to 15 grams of soy sauce, 10 to 15 grams of brown sugar, 10 to 15 grams of cider vinegar, and 10 to 15 grams of the hot sauce of your choice. Then a nice strong pinch of salt, or 2, then I'll stir everything to combine, and now, this is very important, I will taste this chili to see what I think. It sounds obvious, but most people aren't doing this step. After some thoughtful consideration here, I'll hit this with a little bit more salt, stir that in, and one more taste. Didn't blow on that. That's very, very hot, but it's perfect. It's truly delicious and definitely not just chili without meat. This version is full of depth and interesting texture, and I think it stands on its own as one of the great styles of chili. I'll garnish it now with a big dog dollop of sour cream, some grated aged cheddar cheese, some thinly sliced scallions, and then a bunch of oyster crackers, or corn chips if that's how you play. And wow, this is a beautiful, nourishing, flavorful bowl of food. It's smoky, it's creamy, it's perfectly saucy, and it's full of interesting dark mystery. You guys, meat is easy to make taste good, but beans and tomatoes, those need a little bit of creativity to hit just as hard. And this veggie chili does hit pretty frickin' hard. I hope you try it soon. Let's eat this thing.